I thought I was a foundry worker. Artists would come in and say, I don't like that mouth that I did. Would you fix it for me? And here they are doing well, and I'm making $6.50 an hour, and it just seemed like this is not fair. And then my friend Buck McCain, Buck, he used that foundry too. And he said, you got to get out of here. You just got. So he said, get up an hour early every day and draw everything you see. Send me the drawings. I'll look them over, send them back to you. And when I think you're ready to quit, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah, that's better.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay.
We do these things. There's all sorts of stuff that goes into a podcast. You'd be amazed. So we don't tap the thing.
Right. Maybe it's best to keep our hands.
No, you put your hands anywhere you want.
Okay.
They're going to be going crazy anyway.
I know. It's like they have a mind of their own sometimes.
So Susan, I have Susan Kliewer here today. And she just gave a lecture. It was a lecture, right?
Right.
Basically, to the
Yes.
Friends of Western Art last night.
Mm-hmm.
And you told me it was terrifying. And I can't believe it. Was it really terrifying for you?
It wasn't a bit. I just built it up in my mind that it might be. And I looked out at all these nice, friendly people, and I felt fine. So
Yeah, I mean, you're like one of the most gregarious people I know, quite frankly.
Really? I always feel shy.
Do you really?
I do. But when I'm talking about something I love, then it's easy.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
How long have I known you?
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe 15 years?
Oh,
20 years?
Yeah, I was going to say try longer than 15, kiddo. Yeah, it's at least 20, maybe more like 25.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the gallery almost 30 years. So, but
I'll never forget when you called and invited me to be in the gallery. I was thrilled.
Oh, really?
Because I love this gallery.
Tell me more.
Everything you had in it was things I love the most, old pawn and beautiful old antique blankets. And so to be in here with all that wonderful art is a real honor.
Well, I can tell you for sure I didn't call you on a cell phone because we didn't have any.
That's right. We didn't.
That's how long ago
it was. Yeah.
Now, so I want to get the backstory because I don't know it all. I mean, I know a lot about you, but there's some really interesting things that you've done in your life to be able to become a sculptor like you do. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in California, Orange County. My grandparents were ranchers, and back then it was agriculture and ranches, and it was in El Toro, a little town of El Toro.
I worked as a doctor there.
Did you?
Yeah, on the Marine base.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah,
so-
the ranch was just past the Marine base, and it was called Rancho Alegre, a happy ranch, and I loved going out there when I was a kid.
Wow, I didn't know that. So that was your grandparents?
Yeah, and then my uncle took it over after my grandparents died.
Mm-hmm.
My dad went a different direction. He went to work for the forestry, and so I grew up in a forestry station in Orange, and
In Orange, California?
and was county headquarters. And later he became fire prevention coordinator for the state of California, and came up with the idea for Smokey Bear.
Oh, wow.
And
How did that happen?
well, it was a true story, and he took it and went to an advertising agency in L.A., and they drew up Smokey. The Forest Service likes to get credit for it, but it was really my dad. But he worked for the state of California, so...
Yeah, it was a little bear in New Mexico, right?
Yeah, it was a true story.
Yeah, was it Lincoln? The bear was out
Yes.
of Lincoln, right? Yeah.
And he was rescued after a fire, and he had burned
Burns,
paws.
right? Yeah, I remember that.
And so the rangers put him back to health, and eventually when he got big, he went to the zoo in Washington, D.C.
Only you can prevent
That's
forest
right.
fires.
And my dad did TV spots that were
Really? For
black
this?
and white back then, and I was in the Smokey Bear suit. That was my acting career.
You would dress up as a little bear or something?
Oh, they had this great suit. It was beautiful.
And how old were you?
I was about 16.
16 when you were doing it?
Yeah.
And what year would have this been that they came up with that?
1957 or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But before that, I think it was in the 40s that my dad came up with the Smokey Bear idea.
And did he get any credit for that at all?
Well, he did among his peers, but
Yeah.
not financially or anything. It was part of his job, and but he loved it. And
So he's the one who made bears seem cute and cuddly and
right,
versus run.
right, yeah. Of course, there was teddy bears too.
Yeah, that is true. So you grew up in California in the early 50s, late 40s kind of time frame?
Right.
What was L.A. like then? That was Orange County. It wasn't even
Well,
considered L.A.
L.A. we hardly went to.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long trip with no freeways. It was stop and start at red lights. And I had an aunt that lived there, and I hated going there. But Orange County was beautiful. Smelled like orange blossoms. We had the beach. We had skiing in the mountains.
Yeah.
It was paradise.
It was probably paradise, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they were raising like strawberries at that time
And orange groves.
groves.
Avocados. And all kinds of citrus. And
What do you think when you go back now?
I don't like it anymore. It's sad.
I bet, right?
It's just too many people, too much cars, too much everything. And it's not the beautiful little place it was.
What happened to the ranch that your dad,
Well, my cousins tried to keep it
your
going.
uncle?
They even put in a big equestrian center to try to make, because the produce wouldn't pay for the taxes anymore. And they finally lost it.
They
Now it's an industrial park.
So they literally lost the ranch because they couldn't pay the taxes?
Right.
Because the taxes got so high because of all the people coming in and they couldn't sell it to anyone?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I know that it became an industrial park eventually, and I don't know if they made any money off of that or not. But
Wow.
it's gone.
Yeah, that has to be kind of...
So I don't even want to go back there unless I have to.
Yeah.
I have a cousin that lives in Newport Beach, and go see her once in a while. But
And so when you were growing up, did you have brothers and sisters?
nope, I
Just
was
you?
only
Oh, I
child.
didn't know that. See, there's
I
number
didn't like
one.
being an only child, but
Yeah, but
I
you
hung
were.
out down the street with a big family all the time.
And the big family was your uncle and cousins and stuff?
No, they were just neighbors, but I had a big family, though, the Osterman family, and lots of uncles, lots of cousins, and big family get-together, so that was nice.
And so were you interested in art when you were growing up as a kid?
I was.
Yeah. When did you first start noticing that you were interested in this?
I think I had a Remington calendar in my bedroom, and I just kept it up there year after year because I love the stagecoach painting. And when I was really young, my family used to go to Big Bear. My grandma had a cabin there, and we went out to see a movie that was being made in a meadow, and Roy Rogers was there. And he asked me, I was just 4 years old, and little girl, you want to get up on Trigger?
Uh-huh.
So he put me up in front of him, and we loped across this meadow, and that did it.
Oh, wow.
I was in love with the West and in love with horses.
And Roy Rogers,
And
of
Roy
course.
Rogers, yeah.
That's amazing. Is there any picture of that? Do you know?
No, just in my mind.
In your mind?
Yeah.
And so did you start drawing or making sculpture at that point in time when you were just a little kid?
Drawing all the time.
Uh-huh.
We had a milkman whose wife was a painter, and she used to take me out painting with her on occasions, and we'd paint plein air, and I was like 9 years old, and I loved it.
And was she kind of almost like a mentor for you?
Yeah, she was for a couple years.
Yeah.
I think my mom traded her something for lessons. And,
Yeah, I gave her something.
Yeah. But I did a lot of drawing when I was a kid, and I remember I did a painting of a steeplechase when I was in grade school, and it got into the Laguna Art Festival and won a blue ribbon. And all these horses are going over a jump.
Right.
And so that was a big reinforcement that, yeah, maybe you are an artist. You know?
Yeah, and how old were you when you did that?
I was probably 9, 10.
Yeah, so you won the blue ribbon at the Laguna Arts Fair Festival, which was probably a pretty big festival,
It was
right?
a big deal then.
Yeah.
It still is,
Do you still have the ribbon? Do you still have the ribbon?
No,
Yeah.
no.
But
No,
it
go
did
on.
stick with you. That
Yes,
said,
it
I
did.
could do this as a
Sure.
living. And so did you take that into high school, that same love of...
Right, and I took art every year.
Uh-huh.
Our art teacher wasn't the greatest, but
But you took it anyway.
we learned the color wheel.
Yeah, well, there you go. And did you start making sculpture yet? At this
No,
point?
not at all. I mean, this came much later. Moved to Sedona in '69, and then about 5 years later, moved to Marble Canyon.
Let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
So when did you graduate from high school?
58.
So 58. I
Yeah.
can honestly say before I was born.
I'm
Thank you.
sure. You're just a kid.
Yeah, but you always look like you're my age.
Well,
so.
I feel like a kid.
Yeah. So, and when you graduated from high school, were you planning? Did you decide you were going to go into art in college? Or you?
Yeah, I even applied at the LA Art Center and got accepted. Mm-hmm. But then, unfortunately, but not really bad, I had dated the same fellow all through high school, and we got married.
Uh-huh.
And if you got married and had a kid,
That was tough.
that was kind of it. Nowadays, women have families and do it all. But back then, you just, okay, you're a homemaker now, and you are
Right.
mom. And
So you got into the LA Art
but
School,
I didn't get to go.
but you didn't get to go because
No.
you got married and then you had a child.
But,
and that was you
I
were in
studied
love.
art. I was in love, yeah.
Yeah.
And my family, before that, every weekend would go to Laguna as a Sunday drive and go through all the galleries.
Oh, wow.
So I was pretty much really into art.
And you did that
Always.
before you were married and after too,
Right.
as well?
But I used to do big portraits of, I don't know why, I always loved Native American people on their faces. So I'd do portraits on the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad would buy most of them, but that was nice. And
Do you have any of those?
I do.
Oh, that's cool.
I
I'd like
do.
to see this sometime.
They're kind of big faces.
Yeah, I'd like to see those, actually. I really would. Yeah, you have to email me a picture.
I will.
Yeah, we'll put them out for sale. We can sell them.
Yeah, sure.
And what about your family? Were they for you going into art, or were they against that, or did they
Well,
care?
it just happened gradually, but my kids became really good critique art.
But your mother and father, were they good?
They liked art.
And they were fine with you going to the LA Art Center and all that.
Yeah, they were fine.
Yeah,
But
they were also fine when you got married, and that was
Yeah, not that fine, but
no, really.
I was young. I was like 19. So.
Yeah. So
But
they
people did that back then. Graduated, married your high school sweetheart, and that was it.
Yeah, they did it my age too.
Did they?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't, but people did. Mm-hmm. And so did you? So you got married, you had a kid, and then where did you go from there?
Had 2 more kids.
So you had 3 kids.
Moved to the beach. Lived at Corona Del Mar for a while.
Oh, that's nice.
Then moved back into Tustin. And it was getting smoggy there, really bad. And came to Sedona on a camping trip and fell in love with it.
And what year was that you came in?
That
to
was
Sedona?
68.
68 is when. So right at the height of the Vietnam War, really.
Really was.
Yeah.
So we went home, put our house on the market, and moved to Sedona.
Yeah.
And we were there for 4 years. It was great. It was a little town, 2,000 people. The kids had like 9 kids in each class.
So when you're going through, so at 68 you're moving to Sedona, but that's also the time right after that, the Summer of Love and all that's going on.
I missed that.
Yeah. And
I wanted to.
Did you?
Oh, you know that song about if you're going to San Francisco?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, I wish I could go.
Yeah.
But I had 3 kids, and, it was just a nice thought, but
If you didn't have the 3 kids, would you have gone?
probably,
Uh-huh. I could see that.
yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely
Would
see
have been
that.
fun. But then after 4 or 5 years in Sedona,
So why Sedona, though? Why did you move to Sedona? Just because you
because
found
we
it
just
in a
went
camping
there and
trip and it was just
It's
gorgeous?
gorgeous, and it was beautiful blue sky, red rocks, and
No smog, no traffic.
smog. Just a nice little town. And,
Yeah, how big was that in 68?
2,000 people, I think.
And how many people are there now?
I don't know, maybe 15.
15,000?
But a lot of people are there just part of the year, too.
Yeah, it seems bigger than that even.
And the traffic with tourists has gotten really
Yeah, you're
a
back
lot
to LA.
heavier. I know. It's sad.
And so when you moved there, how old are your kids?
They were like, 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade.
Yeah, so they're young.
They were young.
Yeah.
And it was a nice little school. They could walk to school. It was perfect. But I had a friend in California whose boys were my boys' age, and they were best friends. And she had Marble Canyon Trading Post.
Mm-hmm.
She'd inherited it from her father. And
Tell people where that is located for those that don't know.
it's on 89A, the road that will take you past Jacobs Lake if you're going to the North Rim, and then on to Kanab.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really isolated at that point. But I'd gone with her when I lived in California to help her take inventory and loved it. But she thought, and wanted to move there, and she thought that it wasn't a good place for my youngest, who was pretty young, because there was, it was like an hour and a half to get to school in Page.
Mm.
And we didn't even have a telephone when we moved up there, nothing. It was really, really, really isolated. So
she offered you the job to come and manage it?
she did later, after we moved to Sedona and been there for 4 years. She called one day and said, "Do you still want to go there?" And by then I was settled in, but my husband wanted to go. So we did.
And what was he doing?
Well, with the the mobile home park that we bought came heavy equipment. So he was doing excavations and landscaping, and I was doing landscaping too.
And he was probably very busy too.
He was.
Yeah, I would think.
But it was a hard town to do it in because it's so rocky. Teeth are always breaking off the backhoe.
Yeah, I bet.
You know?
And so she offered the job, come up to Marble Canyon and run it and live there too?
Yeah. And we got to live in the old lodge that was built, in the 20s.
Wow.
Great place. Big
Who built
porch.
that? Do you know who built Marble?
Well, Lorenzo Hubble had owned it as a trading post
He did
at one
own it.
point. Yeah.
Wow. Well, he owned a bunch. He
He did, and it really was just off the reservation
Yes, right.
because you go across the Colorado River to get to it on the Navajo Bridge. So, so we had a great place to live, and just walk across the highway to work every day at the trading post.
Wow. And your kids moved up. Everybody moved up.
Everybody, yeah.
What did your kids think of that?
Oh, they liked it because they liked to fish, and they could go down to Lee's Ferry and fish.
Yeah.
The bad part was going to school so far away on the bus.
Was it a 2-hour drive every day?
Hour and a half. They'd
One
have
way.
to one way, and they'd have to go to Cedar Ridge and then double back to go to Page, and to pick up kids. But they learned to be what it's like to be in minority too.
Yeah, I bet. In fact, their school was probably mainly
Mostly Navajo.
Navajo. Yeah.
Yeah,
Was it like 85, 90%?
yeah, it was.
Yeah. And what was that experience like for them?
Well, they had a lot of Navajo friends,
Oh, I'm sure.
and they'd bring them home for the weekend,
Yeah.
and it was great. It
So
was
they
fun.
assimilated.
They did, yeah,
And did they learn to speak any Navajo?
a lot.
Oh, they did.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Because they're at that age, right? These are middle school
Yeah,
time frame.
up to 8th grade. Yeah,
And do they still speak Navajo? Do they have? any
they
of that?
can.
Oh, that's interesting.
And my oldest son fell in love with a Navajo girl in high school, and they kind of ran off together after school, and then got married, had a Navajo wedding, and they're still married, have two kids,
Oh, that's cool.
and those kids have kids, so
Uh-huh.
they live down here in the valley because that's where the jobs are, and
So you have grandkids that are Navajo
yeah,
And
they look very Navajo,
and great-grandkids
and great
that,
grandkids too.
that are Navajo. Oh,
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
So we got to go to a lot of Navajo ceremonies through the years.
I'm sure.
Get invited to Yebiche and all that, and it's been a great thing to be able to be part of that.
Oh, I'm sure.
It has
So, and does your son speak Navajo? Well,
quite a bit.
and how about the grandkids?
Not as much.
Yeah, that's too bad.
I know.
Yeah.
I have a friend that's really she knows so many languages, Russian even, and she was head of this movement to try to save the Navajo language, and she did, but she had to raise a whole lot of money to get it on Rosetta Stone.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You have to pay interpreters and all that.
Yeah, of course. It's very hard. I tried to learn it once. Very difficult language.
Oh, it's hard.
And so you're at Marble Canyon. You get there, and what year do you get there?
I think it was 90 or 60, maybe 74 or so.
Yeah, 74. Okay. And how long are you at Marble Canyon?
5 years.
So you're at for 74 to 79. And what's your job there? What do you do? As you're running the trading post, right? Basically.
Everything.
Did they do pawn at that time?
Yeah. But they didn't have a lot. They had a closet with a few things in it.
Mm-hmm.
Bought a lot of rugs. The people had grocery accounts, and they'd pay off their accounts with rugs.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to learn about rugs really fast.
And what kind of rugs were they making around there?
Pictorials and mostly storm patterns in that part of the res.
And how often would you buy rugs?
Oh, a couple times a week.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, I know.
And,
Mark Winter does that still
you,
every day.
you go through this ceremony, sort of. You fold it over and over, and you look at it, make sure everything matches. You look at the warp, and then the bargaining is something they want to do. It's not like you're trying to cheat them. They give you a price, ashquita, and then you counter it. It's a ceremony.
It's a dance.
It is.
Is the price already determined pretty much in your head and their head before
Probably.
you ever come in?
Uh-huh. Right. And they really, back then, they didn't understand markup. So we'd have to put a code on the lady's name and then a code. So, because they come in and say, well, you paid me this. How come
Yeah.
they didn't understand?
Yeah, so you paid me $100, but you have it at $200.
Right.
Why didn't you pay me $200?
I know.
Yeah. I
So
get
we
it.
didn't want to make them feel bad, but we had to make
Yeah, you had to
money.
stay in business.
But
And
it
did
was-
most of the women at that time speak only Navajo?
mostly.
I would think. And did you have, but they'd bring in their kid or their niece or somebody that
Right.
could translate?
And, you know, you learned words to get along.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you want? Is that, you know.
Do you still
kind of
remember
thing.
all those words?
Oh, I do.
Hey, let's hear it.
Well, you'd say, well, of course, yate and o, which I love.
Uh-huh.
In fact, this woman that was doing the language thing, I came up with an idea for her button, which was just say "o" to Navajo.
Yeah.
So when you say hello,
Yeah.
and there's all these things. The handshake's very soft,
Yes, very much so.
and o, and goodbye, agone, hello, of course, yate,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
And so for 5 years you're there. And have you started to draw or make sculpture at this point?
No, I just
Still not.
I would draw and paint portraits during the winter when it was quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get people to model for me in the restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't open much in the winter. But they'd want the doors closed. They didn't want anybody to see them in their modeling. And then I'd trade them groceries for modeling. But pretty soon they liked it, and they'd bring me photographs of relatives to do. So that was fun.
And so the drawings that you were doing, what would you do with those? Would you sell them yet?
I'd give them to the people.
Oh, you would do, they would,
They were portraits of themselves.
I see. So
Yeah.
they would come in, you would give them some groceries for sitting.
But it was practice for me.
And then you would give them the image.
Right.
And so, oh, that's interesting.
I also did a lot of signage for the building.
Mm-hmm.
And there was ugly paintings in the motel rooms, and they were framed. So I took those and painted a new painting on top of all those for the rooms.
And this is in the hotel. Is the hotel still there?
Yeah,
Because the trading post itself burned down,
it
right?
did, and they rebuilt.
Uh-huh.
So my friend from California, her sons and my sons were best friends. So her son runs it now, Donnie, the youngest one,
And when did that burn down?
about 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So they rebuilt the whole thing.
Right.
Oh.
But, you know, it's a really nice job. It looks great on the outside, but it doesn't have the charm inside of the old place.
Yeah, the old. Do you know when that trading post was originally built?
26, I think.
Yeah, 26. Yeah, Dixon probably went to it, very
He
possibly.
did. Edward Abbey did too.
Yeah.
He used to come in and he liked our chili.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because that's right on the road to a lot of different things.
Right. Yeah.
And somewhat easy to get to comparatively to some other places.
Right.
And so you're there for 5 years. I clearly you enjoy it.
Oh, we did, because it was Navajos, some Hopis, and all the people that went down the river,
Mm-hmm.
and all the river runners. And the people went down the river were from everywhere. And they loved being there, and we loved serving them really good food that they were surprised to get out in the middle of nowhere.
I bet.
And so it was a festive atmosphere. In the winter, we'd work on painting motel rooms and things, but during the summer, it was busy all day long.
Do you think it changed you as who you were as a person?
It did.
I would think. And in what way?
Well, you know, I was a mom raising kids and doing fun things, but I learned so many new things there, and an appreciation for another culture, and it was great. It
And a
really
business
was.
sense, too, after that.
Right. I did have a bookkeeper, nice Mormon lady, come in every day and go do all the cash registers. So that was good.
And what was your husband doing at this time?
He was standing behind the counter drinking beer mostly. No, I shouldn't say that. So, but
Ex-husband?
yeah.
Yeah.
But he was busy,
Mm-hmm.
and the Navajos called him Hostine Yellow Hair,
Because he had yellow hair? Yeah, I take it.
blonde hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blondie, Belagana.
Yeah, and they call me Shema,
yeah.
Mom,
Yeah, I know.
which
that.
was a real compliment,
Yeah, for sure.
because, you know, they'd bring kids in with, you know, infantigo, and I'd have to give them green soap,
Yeah.
and the older ladies, I'd have to do their thumbprint on their checks, and just things like that I didn't know, that you became like a mom to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so when did you start going out to some of the ceremonies, the Yebiche dances and things?
I went to squaw dance when I lived up there.
Uh-huh.
Sosiazi, that ran the gas station, invited this other girl and I to go with him. And we went way out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And it was amazing. The trucks were all lined up in a circle, and there was a drummer and a singer.
Uh-huh.
And and the fire in the middle. It was magic. I did a little sculpture of that too.
Later?
Later, yeah.
So all those interactions with the people, going out and seeing the actual culture, changed the way that you saw yourself and also artistically?
Yeah, it gave me lots of fodder for later pieces, you know. I didn't know I was going to do sculpture, but it was all in my mind.
It was coming, though.
Yeah.
And so when did you, so after 5 years, you leave the trading post?
Yeah, you know, and part of that was to get the kids back to a more normal life.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, who was only 9 then, learned how to drive there, and we'd put her in the truck and send her across the street to pick up people that flew in. We had a runway, and she'd, you know, put the bags in the back, and they were shocked, you know.
Yeah, she's
learning to drive in a place like that. She could drive up and down the runway and practice.
Yeah, it's important. Well, you know, in New Mexico, we get our license at 15.
Yeah.
So
farm kids, you know.
Yeah, well, if you're a farm kid, you could get it at 12.
Yeah.
So we were a city kid, so, you know, but we'd be driving by 14, so that was not unusual at all. But 9, that's a little early.
It was really, and she could make change, run the cash register.
What does she do now?
She's married to a really nice guy, and she doesn't do anything. She's
a mom.
She's a mom.
And now maybe a grandmom too, even?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Her son's in L.A. wanting to be a music. He writes songs, and he's trying to get into that business, kind of like your son did.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what he's doing.
Business.
Yeah.
So you after 5 years, you go, I got to get the kids to maybe a more
normal life, and also the lady that owned the place, great friend, but her bread and butter was selling alcohol, and the Navajos loved this wine called Twister. It was peppermint flavored, cheap stuff.
Yeah.
$2 a bottle. And oh gosh, you know, I lived up there, and they'd be passed out all over the porch in the morning, and it was sad.
Yeah.
And I'd send it back. And we had wine for the restaurant.
Right.
But quit selling that, and she'd reorder it. So it became sort of a war. And the Navajos would say, "Hey, Susie, how come you just have table wine?"
Yeah.
They wanted Twister.
Because it was cheap. And
it was like Tokay or any of those Thunderbird.
Did they do OE for beer, Old English for beer at all? They
didn't drink beer that much. They just liked the cheap wine.
Yeah. Well, it's such a problem with alcoholism.
It's awful.
And if you have an addiction and a disease, you want the
and I think their body makeup, they can't handle sugar like that. And,
so you didn't want to serve the alcohol, and the person who owned the trading post really
did,
because that was a moneymaker for him.
I know.
So that was a breaking point.
So that was another reason.
Yeah, I can understand that clearly.
There was a couple of guys that came over once and bought some wine, went back across the bridge to the res, then came back for more and didn't make the bridge. They went over the edge of the cliff and hung there. They didn't go down. But I thought, my gosh, it would have been my fault.
Yeah, because
if they'd gone over the edge,
Because they were drunk, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can't sell alcohol, for those who don't know it, on the reservation. It's against the law. But because your trading post was outside, just outside.
They'd come to buy booze.
They'd come to buy booze. They do that in Gallup as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you left, and where did you move back to Sedona?
Back to Sedona. Bought some land. Some friends of mine own Oaxaca restaurant, and they asked me to manage it because they were moving to Phoenix. So I did that for a while, and then they sold it. So I stayed on as a waitress. Miserable job.
I bet.
And
how'd you feel at that time? I mean, you have this artistic, creative ability, and you're serving food as a waitress.
Well, you know what I do? I do paintings and put them on the wall in the restaurant and sell them while I was waiting tables.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What were the images of?
Mostly portraits. Yeah. And there was one fellow that came in and he said, "Oh, you're an artist. You should think about working at our foundry. We have a foundry here in town. We need artists." So I sort of thought, oh, well, and I went to work at another restaurant. I stayed home a few days to get my wisdom teeth pulled. And they called me and said, "You don't need to come back. The lady we hired to take your place is a lot faster waitress than you are."
Wow.
I was devastated because by then I was a single parent.
So you had... how long had you been a single parent?
Not very long.
Yeah.
Like 6 months or so.
Yeah.
So I was pretty upset. So
And you had how many kids? 3 kids?
3, but the 2 older ones had already kind of moved on.
Yeah, they graduated.
But it was my daughter and I, who was a teenager by then.
Yes.
So then I remembered the foundry. So I went and applied for a job there. And the owner said, no, women can't do this. Never hired women. It's men's work. It's hard. It's heavy. It's dirty. So I went back 3 times. And he finally said, okay, we'll try you for a month.
Yeah.
If you don't make it, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, and he said, we only have 1 bathroom. And I said, I don't care as long as the door locks, So
What year was this that you did
that
this?
was 70.
Yeah, right at 70. Okay.
No, I'm
A
sorry,
little later,
80.
1980.
Yeah, 80.
And-
So I went to work there, and I loved it. It was a whole new world. It was kind of dark and smoky, exciting. And, the guys that worked there were all NAU sculpture students that had graduated. And they were so great, and they taught me to do it. And I tried to learn really fast. So he kept me on.
You were faster at that than food.
Much better.
Yeah. You were happy.
I was happy.
Yeah. You weren't doing it for a paid check so much
Yeah.
as to just trying to learn and be an artist, right?
Yeah, but at that time, I thought, I'm a painter. I have no interest in being a sculptor. But the man that owned it, Bill Woodruff, was very nice and said, you can use the foundry. Everybody can if you pay for your materials. And so it took me about a year to even try. And the guys would say, stay after work and sculpt with us. We all make things. And finally I did. And then I went and took a class up at NAU, Anatomy for Sculptors, which was a great class. And they'd all taken it. And so you learned all the muscles and attachments and bones and everything. So
Was the real reason that you chose to do the sculpture is because availability and you could have the access to make it?
I think so. Because it costs a lot to have things cast, and to get together a body of work to show a gallery, you can't just take one piece in.
No, it's true.
So
Did you think of yourself as an artist at this point?
not really.
No.
I thought I was a foundry worker. And I liked being a foundry worker. That was fine.
What did you do? What was your job as a foundry
I did
worker?
everything. I did waxes, made molds. I was a chaser for a while, which is not a fun job.
Yeah, tell people what a chaser is.
After the piece is cast, the chasers sit at a bench and grind off the gates, which were channels for the bronze to fill the piece, and retexture where it was so people can't see.
Right.
Do a lot of welding, a lot of grinding. You get bronze splinters all over you. And in the summer, that's hot and itchy. But mostly wax room, and I love touching up waxes. That was nice. So,
And that means that they have a wax model of the sculpture.
which
and
came out of the mold.
Right.
It has a seam line.
And so you clean up all the little details.
Right. Sometimes you have to put like horse legs back on. Anything that sticks out that has to be cut off before the mold. So you have to touch it up so it doesn't show where it joined. So it was kind of nice work. It was pleasant.
And you got to meet other artists, too. Lots of
And
other
that
artists.
was the best part.
I would think that would be the best part.
That was...
Those are your kindred spirits that you just don't know
and
it.
these guys were Joe Beeler, Johnny Hampton.
And they all pretty much were guys, probably, weren't they? That you're
Mostly.
seeing? Yeah.
Yeah, most all were men. And Johnny would buy us all tickets to go to the Cowboy Artist show every year.
Wow.
And
That was Johnny Hampton?
yeah, and we'd all sit at his table.
Wow.
I mean, he was so good to us.
That really is. That is exceptional.
So I got exposed to this whole wonderful Western art world, and Joe was great. When I first started, I'd take my sculptures over to his house, and he'd critique them for me.
Wow.
And so that went on for 9 years.
So you were working at the foundry for 9 years, and after about a year when you first started, you started making your
Doing my
first-
own, yeah.
And what kind of imagery were you doing at that point?
The first one I did was 3 prairie dogs, just a paperweight size.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Still have that one?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And then they got bigger, and then
But the West was what you saw as being your subject
that's
matter.
what I loved.
Yeah.
You know? If you do what you love, it's easy.
And so after you said 9 years you worked there? And then
I topped out at $6.50 an hour.
Oh,
And
gosh.
so artists would come in and say, I don't like that mouth that I did. Would you fix it for me in clay or in wax? I
Yes.
can fix it. And here they are doing well, and I'm making $6.50 an hour, and it just seemed like this is not fair.
Right.
I need to get. And then my friend Buck McCain.
Yes.
You know Buck?
I do.
He used that foundry too, and he said, "You got to get out of here. You just got." So he said, "Get up an hour early every day and draw everything you see. Send me the drawings. I'll look them over, send them back to you, and when I think you're ready to quit, I'll tell you." So that's what happened.
Wow. And how long did he do that for you?
Oh, about 6 months.
And you'd get up every morning and draw?
And did, yeah. And so it would have been too big a step to take when you're, a single parent, not to have a paycheck. So
Yeah, no, right.
yeah. So I did. I got in a gallery in Tlaquepaque in Sedona, and they were people that I'd waited on as a waitress, so I knew them.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, I was up at Mountain Trails Gallery, and the lady that managed it said, "Oh, I know you. Gosh, you want to be in the gallery? Wow, are you kidding?" So Ken Payne set me up with a sculpture stand and loaned me a Navajo saddle for my first piece, and just started the whole thing. Then I got to do a big sculpture of Sedona Schnebley.
I don't know who that is.
She's the lady the namesake of
Okay.
Sedona. She was an early pioneer, and they had a competition, and I won. So I got to do, this was in 95, 94. I got to do a big sculpture of her, which is in front of our library still.
Okay. I'll have to go see that.
That made a huge difference.
Yeah, I bet. Now all of a sudden people know who you are.
Yeah.
And they're probably selling it to Tlaquepaque galleries. And
Yeah, they sold maquettes to make money to pay for the big one. It's 10 feet high. And the art center there in town let me use their art barn room because it had a high ceiling. So I worked on it all summer, and it became like kind of a community project because all the locals would come in and visit.
Sure. Yeah.
I'd get them to model hands and everything. And it was a nice project. It was good. And it really helped me too. And then I did Sonawa piece for Uptown Sedona, which you have a small version of
Yes.
here.
And that's in the heart of Sedona, right?
Uptown, we call it.
How tall is that sculpture?
Oh, well, I don't know. What is it? It's life size, so it's about almost 6 feet or more than with a base. But
And that was inspired from Hopi friends, wasn't it? Or the models?
Hopi models.
Yeah.
My friend Kate modeled for it, and she's still my best friend.
That's funny.
We get to go up to dances at Moan Kopi. And yeah, she was 25, and that was a long time ago.
Yeah, what does she think when she sees herself in
I think
bronze
she's
like
happy
that?
with it.
Yeah?
Yeah. She's an artist herself. She watercolors, and she's in the Hopi show every year up at the Museum of Northern Arizona, and does well.
Very good.
Has her own salon in Cornville. Her husband's a school teacher. So all these people and all these things just came together at the right time. I still can't believe it.
What do you think was it that allowed you to break away and get back to what you really should have been to begin with?
Well, it was self-confidence, really, to be able to think I could make a living at this, and to jump out, take a chance.
You must have caught some grief from other male sculptors at some point, just because, most of the competition, especially when you're first starting, is all guys, right?
It was. And the few female sculptors were afraid to put their names. They'd use their initials so nobody'd know they were a woman. And I never did that. But they still do it. And I think that's crazy.
Right.
Because people used to just want to buy men's work.
Yes.
They did.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And you saw that? You experienced that?
I did.
Did you ever have somebody go, "Oh, I love this sculpture. Oh, it's a woman. I don't want to buy it"?
They might have, but they didn't tell me.
Yeah. I've never had that. I don't think
think nowadays it's prevalent.
No, it's changing dramatically.
It has.
The Baltimore Art Museum is just buying women's work, only women's work
No
for
kidding.
1 year.
Huh.
All their acquisitions are only going to be by female because they're so behind, as most museums are, in representing women artists in their collections.
Great.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that feels like it's
That's
a long
wonderful.
time coming.
It is. And I do belong to Cowgirl Up which is a group that has a show every year in March at Wickenburg at the museum, Desert Caballeros, which is a great little museum.
Yeah, it's a fantastic one. They have an Ed Mel retrospective up right now, by the way,
Yeah.
for anybody who's hearing this.
So that's a fun thing to look forward to, and it's all women, and they're all really good.
And that's in April?
March.
March. It is in March. Okay.
It's coming up.
And what do you know when in March it is?
I can't remember.
We'll get this out so people can
I
hear
should
it before
know.
then.
Yeah.
And what about the Cowboy Artists of America? Did you ever apply to them?
I didn't. And they used to say, gee, I wish you were a man because you could be in our group.
Yeah.
But I understood, they have a trail ride every year. And they'd say, well, we sit around the fire and we tell dirty jokes and all this. I said, I don't care.
Yeah. I used a restroom at the foundry for
Yeah,
one.
right.
A unisex.
And we told terrible jokes at the foundry.
I'm sure.
I had to be one of the guys, and it was fine. And they said, well, I know. And several women did apply, and they kind of got laughed at.
Yeah.
And I could see it's their thing. It's in their bylaws, they're cowboy artists.
Yeah.
So I was always hopeful, but then I thought, nah.
Well, and you knew
It's
these
there.
guys. You knew some
I
of
know
these.
them, and they were good friends.
Yeah.
I used to go down and help Johnny Hampton finish pieces
Mm-hmm.
because he'd party all year.
Yeah.
He was like a Charlie Russell. He was great, but he loved to be around his friends and drink and have fun.
Yeah.
And he'd always wait till the last minute to get his piece done for the CA show.
Yeah.
So they'd send me down there to stay with him and make him work. And he didn't like it. I mean, he was used to going out about noon at the glass door and staying out all day.
Yeah.
Into the night, he'd bring people home at 2 a.m, after the bar closed. But he had a great time. He loved it. And so I would make him work until maybe 5 o'clock, and then we'd go out.
And yet he was instrumental in your world too,
Oh, he
right?
was.
Yeah.
He really was.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah. Huh?
He was so funny. He just he'd take naps too during the day at the glass door, and people would come and go. He had a big round table in the middle, and people would come sit, and he'd kind of doze off, Another group would come in. That Johnny's a great guy, It was just like watching a movie. It was fun.
Oh, wow. Well, it sounded like, maybe some other things were going on there as well.
Yeah.
Besides sleeping. And so at what point did you feel like you were an artist? That you are now not a foundry worker, not a waitress, not a mom, but an artist?
I guess when I sold my first piece at a gallery.
Uh-huh.
And then that gave me, the confidence to keep doing it.
And which gallery was that?
This was a little gallery in Tlaquepaque called El Mundo Magico.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone now, but they were nice people and a nice little gallery.
And was this in the early 80s time frame? Yeah.
No,
Or later even?
later, like 89.
Yeah, 89. Yeah. Well, you kind of exploded, I think, pretty quickly after you got going, don't you think? I mean, it seems like it.
It seemed like it. There was one point when things were pretty slow, and I took a job selling apple cider for Garland's in front of their rug store.
And when was that?
That was like about 90.
Yeah. So, right. Yeah. And
No, earlier.
was that a hard thing for you to do? I mean, you're an artist, you're selling art, you feel like you're an artist, and now you're trying to make money just selling
not too bad.
apple cider?
I knew it wouldn't last too long, but I just had to fill it in a little bit. But
Yeah. And did you go to Danny or one of those guys and just say, hey, I need to do this?
yeah,
And they said, fine, you can set up and do it?
right.
Yeah, so they helped
Well,
you
it was
as well.
their apple cider.
Oh, I see. So they made a little money too.
And they had their apple truck parked there, and I had
Yeah.
a table, and I had a heater thing to make it hot apple cider in the winter. It was fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad.
I find it amazing. Yeah, you can have that kind of attitude, and maybe that's what it takes to succeed.
And it's hard. So many people that go to school, fine art degree, all that. It's like 1% that can make it as a professional artist. It's not easy.
No.
So I just happened to be the right place at the right time, I think.
You think?
Yeah.
I think it's more than that. I think it's perseverance.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Probably some of that too.
I think a lot of that.
And a lot of it's luck.
What kind of luck? What was the luck?
Well, doing the trading post job, which gave me all these subjects to sculpt later on, and learning all that. And, it just seems like it was placed in front of me to learn before I could sculpt.
Yeah, but you took advantage.
Yeah, that's true.
See, there's no luck there.
Yeah, no.
You see the opportunity and you take it. It might have been a different opportunity, and you would have done that too, I think. I mean, in your mind, did you ever think you weren't going to be an artist?
I always wanted to be when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I guess I didn't think about it much later on. Just liked to do art. So, yeah.
It was part of you.
It was part of me.
Yeah, it was who you were.
Right.
And so in the 90s, you start to do well.
Right.
You're starting to pick up galleries. And
First gallery that did really well was Mountain Trails.
Yes.
And Ken Payne asked me to be in that gallery.
Yeah, and they did really well.
And they did really well right off the bat. I couldn't believe it. And he had his gallery was in a different location. It was upstairs, sort of in the back patio. And he had his work there too. But he, set me up with a big sculpture stand and clay and everything. I was like, here you go.
Right. So you could show up, work in the studio. People would come in.
Right.
And, once they meet you, they're going to buy your sculpture too.
And we did the precast thing, which we'd have a sheet. I'd get a bid from the foundry, put the price as low as I could. And people could buy it before it's cast and know they're saving money. And then once it's cast, it goes up for everyone else.
Yeah, it's like an early Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Is really exactly what it is.
They pay half down, and that gives me the money up front for the foundry.
Right.
Which is good. And so that became really a big deal back then. Now it's kind of lost its impetus. I don't know. People don't want to tie up their money that long. It still goes on, but not like it did for a while there.
And do you think that's because of the people, or do you just think Western art in some ways has changed?
It's changed. A lot of our collectors that have bought so many pieces are maxed out. They're ready to downsize. And a lot of times their kids like contemporary art. It's a quandary. I think there's always been great art collectors that like Western art, and it'll never go away.
I agree with that statement. Yeah, I do.
I mean, Western art's an American art form.
It's the only one.
Besides jazz.
And Native American art as well.
Yeah, but you think about it.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So it's always going to be here. It's always going to stay
But
popular.
I know, at least for us, we continually are selling your work. I don't see it if anything, maybe more sales than we've ever done.
It's great. Yeah.
Is that through other galleries that you see that as well, or is it just ours? They're still actively selling your work, right?
Oh, they are, sure.
Yeah, I mean, when
Santa Fe and Jackson Hole.
And where do you show in Jackson?
At Mountain Trails. It's a different owner than Sedona, but...
Well, when they come into our gallery, the first thing they see before they even walk in the door are two huge monumental sculptures of Julian.
Nice.
Julian. And
I'm glad it's by the door now. It looks good there.
Yeah, it looks very good, doesn't it?
It does.
I love to watch the kids come and stop and get photos with it. And, these are, 8 feet tall, maybe, imagery of Julian Martinez.
And they can touch. That's the nice thing about sculpture. You
and
can
Maria
touch
Martinez. Yeah, they can. I encourage it, actually.
Good. I do, too.
Yeah, when kids come into our gallery, I always go, especially if I hear the parents go, don't touch. And I go, let me show you all the things you can touch. And I have them let them touch every sculpture they want. Anything that's hard, they can give it. And you see their eyes just light up.
Yeah.
And the parents are, usually get very excited as well because now they can engage. It's not just a battle of trying to keep them from doing something, but they feel like they can be a part of
That's wonderful.
Yep. And I do that every time any little kid comes in. And it makes a difference.
It's funny how many adults come in with their hands behind their backs.
Yeah.
And I'll say, it's okay, you can touch. No, I can't do it. Because it was drilled into them when they were kids.
That's right.
They can't do it.
I bet that's right. Yeah, because you spent a lot of time in Mountain Trails, right? Sculpting. Yes. So you got to see.
I don't quite as much as I used to. Not near as much, actually. But I spent many years sculpting in the gallery, meeting people. And it was fun. And I had the best of both worlds because I can do that anytime I want, or I can sculpt at home and have quiet time. So,
now, you did a big, amazing project in Hawaii, too.
I was going to tell you about that.
Yeah, tell us about that.
It was on Kauai, the island Kauai, and Sculpture Garden is also a botanical garden. It's called Nainikai Gardens.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady that owns it is Charles Schultz's widow.
Mm-hmm. Peanuts. Yeah.
So she's bought sculptures from everybody. And they're all over this beautiful 200-something acre garden.
Mm-hmm.
And all kinds of plants from all over the world.
Mm.
And
It's open to the public?
it's open to the public. People can come, take a tour. They can ride around on, golf carts, or they can walk. And it's gorgeous. Just gorgeous. So she asked me to do a Navajo project, which she'd already done a Hawaiian. It's kind of like a giant diorama.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hawaiian was like ancient Hawaiians building boats and houses and going about their daily life.
Mm-hmm.
So she wanted me to do a Navajo compound. So she had a man come and do this backdrop of red cliffs. And it looks good. And it's big. It's huge. And then I did all the figures in front of it. So I did 14 pieces.
And these are bigger than life size?
They're 3/4 life size.
3/4 life size.
Because it's in the children's garden to teach children about other cultures. So they're not huge, but they're big.
And what are the imagery? I haven't been there, but I'm going to.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, there's like a shade shelter, and under that is a lady weaving a rug, and another lady spinning wool, and a lady with a baby and a cradle board.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a man on a horse. There's sheep. There's goats. Some of these pieces were smaller pieces that I'd done, and I enlarged them.
Mm-hmm.
There's Apache Autumn, which is a lady picking corn, and she's sort of brushing her hair back from her forehead. That's in a cornfield. So it looks great. And it was a fun project. We got to go to Hawaii a lot.
I bet. And this is with your husband, your current husband.
Yeah.
Tell us about him, too. He's an interesting cat.
He is.
I know. I should have him on.
Yeah, you should.
I know.
He's a good talker, too.
Yeah, he is a good talker.
So I met him about 93.
Uh-huh.
I belonged to a group called Sedona Saddle Club. And so he ended up on the same ride, which was out behind my house. And he was ahead of me, and he kept looking back and talking to me.
Uh-huh.
And so he said, well, when we got done with the ride, he said, would you like to do something sometime? And but I'm going to hike the Grand Canyon with this old girlfriend that's coming out from the East Coast. So I said, great, sure, So when he got back, this is unusual for me. I called him.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I said, hi, how are you? How was the Grand Canyon hike? Da-da-da. He said, well, I'm sitting here talking with this lady, and she's going back to Boston. Turned out they were breaking up.
Ah.
So anyway, a few weeks later, he called me. He was working at Kachina Stables, and he called me and said, if it's raining, I don't have to work, so you want to go for a day, go riding, driving, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So we had this long, beautiful day together, and just got better and better. And he had a place down in Cornville, big piece of property. But there was better places to ride where I live. So we put all the horses in one corral and just had a lot of good times together. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was 2.
Yeah.
And this was 93?
Yeah, but we got married in 95.
Yeah.
Up on top of Schnebley Hill.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, because he seems to be, I think, very integral into what you do as well.
He is. I mean, he always loved art. He came from Ipswich, Massachusetts, which is different culture than myself.
Right.
But it was a real arty place back then, so he always did like artists that lived back there. And he went to school at the Boston School of Photography. So he had this art side of him.
Right, clearly.
And, he was more than just a dude wrangler. Mm-hmm. He just wanted to learn all about horses, so he took that job.
He wanted to be a Westerner.
He wanted to from the time he was a kid.
Yeah.
He watched cowboy movies and grew up wanting to live in the West. So he got a job working on Tombstone. So he was down here all that summer. That was before we were married.
Was that as a wrangler?
No, he was part of the Red Sash Gang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know he did those kind of things where he would be in the films themselves, right?
He loved that. And he had done a lot of acting before that. He was in the Screen Actors Guild. So He had a lot of speaking parts, but they cut all those parts.
As long as you get paid, that's all that matters.
Yeah. So he was down there all summer working on that. And then he had Maverick and quite a few jobs up north. And it got to the point, though, if you don't live in L.A., it's really hard.
Yeah, I would think so.
You get an audition, you got to go to L.A. If you get a call back, you go back. And they never call you. They don't tell you if you got it or not.
Yeah.
You just wait. You know all that. It's a mean business, I think.
And so he could help you, take sculptures around and do all the things, because he's shown up many a time with sculptures.
Oh, he does it all the time.
Yeah.
He likes to drive.
Yeah,
He loves
clearly.
to drive.
He'll show up at the...
Yeah. So he goes to the foundry in Sedona where I have him cast. Then he takes him to Prescott to my patina man, who's very good, Eric Peterson. Mm-hmm. And so he does that a lot, once a week at least. And he just keeps moving. He likes to paint, too.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
We go on trips. We take our paints. We do plein air painting together. Mm-hmm. And he's good.
Doesn't
He's
not
really
surprise
good.
me. So you do these plein air paintings. You really thought of yourself as a painter or as not a sculptor, but you never really show any of that work.
I don't.
And why is that?
Well, I've asked Mountain Trails, and they'll say, "Oh no, you're a sculptor."
Yeah, you get pigeonholed.
Yeah, you do. But I sell a lot to friends. Mm-hmm. Some friends of mine in Sedona bought a really big portrait of a horse, kind of contemporary piece.
So
Recently.
Do you have a preference if you could do one or the other? Would you pick one over the other?
No, I like it both.
Uh-huh.
I think both mediums help you. I think when you sculpt, then you go back to painting and you paint bigger shapes, you know, and it's good.
I think almost every sculptor I know does some kind of painting or drawing as well. I don't know anybody who doesn't.
Right.
And
it's all good. Painting's harder, I think. There's more things to think about.
Well, I think you have a huge advantage having worked at a foundry.
Right.
I mean, you're one of the few that understands that.
And foundries love me because I know how to make life easier for them.
So when you bring them the sculpture, you've done the heavy lifting.
Just for instance, if a person has a jacket on that's flying out, you want that to stay on that piece, but you kind of fill in under where you can't see it, but it makes it easier for them. So it's not this thin piece of jacket flying out. Just little things like that.
Yeah, big
help.
Things like that.
Yeah.
And you know how to do your patinas too, right?
No, I'm terrible at it.
Oh, come on.
I am. I used to try, and it's a tricky thing.
It's
hard.
No.
If it's too hot, it'll scorch.
Yeah.
If it's too cold, it'll chip off, and you have to know just how hot it is by how the chemicals sizzle.
Yeah.
When you put them on.
Well, it's an art unto itself.
It is.
Very few sculptors that I know do their own patina, actually.
Right.
Carol Allman does, but I don't know very many people that do.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Eric's so good that
and this
I could never come close.
Yes, and which foundry is this? We'll give him a shout out.
It's really a patina shop.
Yeah.
He does John Coleman's. He does, who else? Kim Orbisette. A lot of. He only takes certain people. And he also has some chasing people in there. They put together a lot of John's big pieces.
And what's the name of the business, or does he have one?
It's called Peterson Creations, but now he's changed the name, and I forgot what it is. Something bronze, but I wish I remembered.
Yep.
He just did it, so I can't remember.
Well, you can reach out to us.
But he's amazing. His dad is the manager.
And he's in Sedona?
He's in Prescott.
He is in Prescott. Okay.
Yeah.
So somebody can find him. But he only takes certain sculptors that probably that are easy to work with to some extent. Or
probably.
Yeah.
And he did a show. His cousin's a photographer. And he did a great show of all his bronze artists. Did portraits of them. And it was fabulous. He's showed it at a museum in Prescott. And where else? I wish he'd bring it back because it was really good. It was fantastic.
And so where are you headed now? In your life? You've been doing this now for a long time, right?
A long time.
Yeah, as a professional artist, you're in over 30 years.
Over 200 pieces.
Over 200 big pieces, too. How many of those are monumental?
Not all big.
And how many?
Not that many. Maybe 7.
Yeah, that's still.
I did a giant jester for the Royal Order of Jesters.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of them?
No, not until just this moment.
I know I hadn't either.
Uh-huh.
But they're
It
sort
seems
of
like it should be in London.
I think they're an offshoot of the
Friars.
Friars. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, but their headquarters is in, where is it? Not Cincinnati. Anywhere in the Midwest.
The Royal Order of
Jesters.
Jesters. Uh-huh. And what did
And
you
it's
do?
quite an exclusive men's group.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. You have to be invited.
Uh-huh.
And I did a giant jester.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he's holding a stick with a jester head on it.
That's interesting. That, it's a men's group, but they picked a woman to do it.
I know.
That's interesting.
It's pretty neat. And then I did a lot of little ones so they could sell them to make money to do the big one.
Uh-huh. And where is it a public
It's in front of their
sculpture?
club.
Yeah, so it's outside.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Funny. Odd jobs you get like that,
Yeah, but those are fun. Well, you did the Maynard Dixon sculpture, which we have for people who are watching on YouTube. That's Susan's sculpture is sitting on my
And
table.
that was fun.
Yeah.
Because I love Maynard Dixon.
Yeah,
You know
and
me.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing
When I
image.
paint, I kind of try to do Maynard Dixon type.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it always is in our museum. And, of course, we have the show going on at the Scottsdale Museum of the West. You're in the book.
I want to see that.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's up through August 2nd. And you're in the Maynard Dixon book as well because of your sculpture.
Right.
And John Dixon told me that he really thought you captured his father well.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah, he did.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. What a compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
So, and you do, I mean, I know you did one of Navajo and Maria, and you'll take
Yeah.
imagery and you'll really study it and try
And
to get the
actually,
pots right and all
doing
that.
Maria was your idea.
Okay, I'll take
Remember
that.
we went out to
Yeah, I
lunch?
do.
Yeah, it was a great idea.
Yeah. I remember we were really trying to make sure we got the pots right. To me, that was one of
Right.
the most important things.
And then I did Nampeo, and I did tried to do the pots, the designs that she would have done at that age,
Yes. Yes.
and that was fun.
Yeah. Those are wonderful. And there's still, the Maria's sold out, but I think the
Right.
Navajo is still available.
It is,
Yeah.
and the pots look great.
Yeah, they do.
I remember I was in Santa Fe, and
I
you
do.
put some of her pots in front of me, and they were great models.
Well, I think if you're going to do something that of a individual, somebody you're really trying to represent as a real person, which they are, they're an artist too, and they wouldn't want their art to not look like them.
No, they wouldn't.
I mean, it would be
That would be insulting. Wouldn't that be
it
awful?
It would be actually. It would be, and you've
Yeah.
seen those things. I mean, you've seen
Yeah.
sculptures where people have just not gotten it right, and you
Yeah.
go like, "Oh, that's not that's not what he did or looked like."
Yeah.
And he was left-handed, not right.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So, where are you headed in what you're doing artistically? Anything coming up? Anything
I
else you
just
wanna-
keep coming up with new ideas, and can't wait to start a new piece. And
How many do you do a year? It's not that many.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Because of the 2 shows I'm in, the Mountain Oyster show and
Mm-hmm.
the Cowgirl Up show in Wickenburg, you have to have all new pieces.
Mm.
So that keeps you going.
Mm.
A lot of people say, how come you're still doing so many? You've got so many. But I
Well,
love it.
But you only do maybe 3 a year?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And how long does a sculpture usually take you?
3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
If you did a monument, that really cuts into that time.
Yeah, I would believe it.
Yeah. So, but they're fun too. Except they're hard work.
The monument.
As I get older, climbing up and down ladders and
Right.
gets
Well,
harder.
and they're harder to sell too,
They
I think,
are.
because you have to have the right space and all that.
I know. They're big. And
They are big.
but I used these fellows down here in Tucson
Mhm.
to enlarge a lot of pieces I did for Hawaii. And that was good because I could give them the small piece
Mm-hmm.
or have my mold maker make, a resin cast and then give that to them and they could enlarge it and then you get it back in styrofoam
Right.
in pieces. You glue it all together and you have to refine that and then give that a coat of clay
Mm-hmm.
and then resculpt the whole surface. But it saves months of work. And
Months, yeah.
It's expensive, but it's worth it, you know.
And you can do it if you know you have a sale.
Right.
If you don't have a sale, it might
You're
not
putting
be
out
as-
a lot of money
Yeah.
for the casting and the enlargement.
Yeah, I
so.
think people don't realize how expensive it is to be a sculptor.
I know. And it's always a chance you take, you know. You spend that money, you don't know if people are going to like it or not. But you don't want to sculpt to do things you want to sell. I mean, what you want to sell,
Right.
but you don't try to figure out the market and do something to fit the market.
No,
I don't
that's
think
right.
That's
It's like a writer. I'm working on a book right now that that's not in my murder mystery series
it's not.
that people may not want to
Yeah,
buy.
but you want to do it,
But I want to do it. So
and it'll be fine.
it'll be fine for me because
Yeah.
it'll be enjoyable and it'll find an audience. But you just don't know, will it be that audience?
Right.
And I'm sure. I mean, you keep, I think, pretty much in a lane of what you like to do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Western Native American subject matter to some extent. Wouldn't you say that's true?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. I've talked to artists. Well, James Muir used to do all Civil War art, and I worked for him for a little while after I left the foundry, just a while. But he had a lot of collectors. He did really well, but he got tired of doing Civil War, so he sort of switched to world history, like gladiators, and at first his clients dropped him. They didn't want him to change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hard, but you should do what you want to do.
Did he ever find an audience
He came
again?
back. Yeah.
Yeah,
he
that's
did.
the problem. Yeah, it's a
But
real.
it took a while. It wasn't overnight.
No, it's an issue for
They didn't
artists.
like him to change.
Yeah. And there's a point in an artist's career, you go, okay, I'm X amount of age. Can I build that audience up again, or is
Right.
it just too late?
I know.
Yeah, I'm sure, right?
I know. It's tricky.
And so what are you working on right now, sculpture-wise?
I have a precast out in the car
Oh, there
that
we
I
go.
brought down here.
Oh, there we go. Tell me about it.
It's a woman wrapped in a blanket. A
Navajo blanket.
woman.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And she has a really nice face. I forgot what I even named it now.
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyway, I think it's going to be a nice, really beautiful. It's pretty tall,
And is it done or is it
almost.
almost done?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So is it still in the clay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And you're going to leave it with us?
I
See,
have
this
to
is
get
where
it to the foundry
this is where
because people
the
are
dealer part of
waiting.
me
I've made a few sales in the precast sales,
Yes.
so I can't. I got to get it going.
But they can still purchase it as a precast
Right.
level value.
We could photograph it, or I could photograph it when I get home and send it to you.
Yeah, do that.
Okay.
Yeah. See, this is the business part of what I do.
And that's great.
I immediately take off my Art Dealer Diaries hat, and now I'm putting back on, okay, let me get the
Yeah.
sculpture. Yeah, that
And
sounds
so
great.
it all is a business. Mine's a business.
Yeah,
you know,
oh,
when you think
100%,
about it.
yeah. Well, the best artists have some kind of business savvy, I think. They understand there's things that
I'm
you need
terrible
to
with
do.
numbers, but it's all in here. I know.
Yeah, but you're also very aware of what needs to be done sometimes to make
Oh, yeah.
sales and those kind of things.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think you have a very good business
Joe
sense.
Beeler said once, people talk about being in the mood to do art. He said, if you're going to make a living, you don't do that. You get up every morning and you go work. And, and I look forward to it. I love it. But all this being in the mood stuff's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, if you love it, what you do is you go and sell apple cider in front of the side of a road,
Yeah.
in front of garlands, so you can continue to be an artist.
Right.
That's what it takes,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
You're right.
You know, and if
Yeah.
if you have that out there,
You don't say,
whoever-
oh, I'm all washed up. I'm giving up. You know,
yeah, that's right, because
done.
that's easy to do.
Yeah, it is.
And most people do that.
And art's really personal. You put your heart and soul out there, and if people don't like it, it's kills you. You know, it's like, whoa.
It does.
I
sure.
thought it was okay, and
Yeah.
you don't like it. So
But don't you get to a point where you go, I don't care. I'm just going to, if I
Yeah.
did the best I can, I like it, and
That's-
that's going to have to be as good as
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do that with my books. You
Do
know,
you?
some people are not going to like them or they'll
Yeah, you
something.
can't be thin-skinned.
I don't. Yeah, I do it and I write it, and for those people who get enjoyment, then fantastic, and those who don't, then
Right.
read somebody else. Go,
So I took a
find
piece of the
another-
gallery the other day. Well, Jeff took it in, and she must have been in a kind of sad mood. I don't know, but she's going, oh, it's called Victory Dance, and I'll get you one soon. But she's got her husband's shield, and she's dancing, and well, she's not smiling. Well, most Native people, they don't big toothy smiles. They cover their mouth,
Yeah, that's right.
so it's not what they do.
Yeah.
So I tried to explain it to her, and but she was ready to take it back. I don't want it. She's not smiling.
Oh yeah.
And it's like,
You got to know the culture, kids.
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And they've sold 2 cents in. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really, it's really interesting to watch people. There's people that really gravitate to your sculpture. They really love it, and I see it on a regular basis. You don't get those
No, I don't.
accolades, but I hear it on a regular
That's so nice.
basis. Yeah, I do.
And a little secret I do is when I'm building the armature and I start putting clay on it, I make a little human heart and put it inside. And to me, that gives it heart and soul and makes them real people.
Wow. So on every one of them, there's a little human heart inside?
Yeah. And it's all covered up and all that, but it's kind of my little superstition, and it seems to be a good one.
So if they ever x-ray the sculptures, they'll see it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I think that's a place we'll leave then. It's
Okay.
a good place then. Susan Kliewer, who definitely has a big heart, and so does her sculptures. Thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
on the
you,
Art
Mark.
Dealer Diaries. You can see all their stuff at my gallery and others too. Yeah, go online. You're fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks,
all right.
Mark.
Let's
It
go
was
have some
fun.
apple cider. What do you say?
Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
serve.
Okay. Make sure it's hot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Need it today.
Yeah, it's all cold. Can't believe how cold it is down here.
We need your support for the Medicine Man Gallery channel, so make sure to click the subscribe button and tap the little bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video, which we do every morning on Wednesday and Friday. See you soon.